Guys, Showtime here again with another absolute fucking banger of a video, guys. YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're seeing this from, bro, we're gonna get right into it. Everybody's having a great day, or whenever you're seeing this, great day, great night. It's currently daytime, 10:21 here in Atlanta, and we're gonna get straight into the reaction of four of the biggest losers from the 2025 NFL season. So without further ado, man, let's get straight into it, bro. Hit that hoe. Show my handy dandy. Wow, that's way too loud. All right, here we go.
NFL players and coaches report to training camp every summer with one goal in mind: to get better every day so that they have a chance to get to the NFL playoffs and to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. But as we know, only one team can be crowned a Super Bowl champion every year, and some teams have high expectations entering each and every year that fail to live up to these expectations. And in today's video, we're going to break down four of the biggest losers from the 2025 NFL season. We're going to break down what the expectations were heading into the year, what went wrong, and why they are in today's video. Now, I feel like this should be mentioned, but the players and teams we are talking about themselves obviously aren't.
I was never I was never sold on JJ McCarthy ever in college. I always saw him as a handoff merchant, being that Harbaugh liked to run his offense primarily with running backs and a really good O-line. And these numbers they show justice for it. Now, this is his first ever really NFL season because he hurt his ACL last year, but 11 passing touchdowns, 12 picks, 72.6 pass rating, 181 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and he started in 10 games. These are not great numbers at all, and it just further proves that he is a handoff merchant. I just believe that he is just a handoff merchant. True and true, man.
Losers as people, but they are losers from the expectations they had entering the 2025 season. And there is a lot to break down in today's video, and if you could like the video before we start, a football will appear when you do and be very much appreciated. And with that preface out of the way, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys finished the year with a 7-9-1 record, and
the 7-9-1 record is crazy, being that this is probably one of this. I don't know what. I'm pretty sure this is the top 5 offense this league. Somebody fact check me on that shit, but you got 2 receivers going over 1,000 and a running back over 1,000. I'm pretty sure. And your defense just happens to be the worst defense in the league and sells you every time, which even furthermore proves the point that defense does legitimately somewhat win championships. They have a great offense. They score at 45. The other team score at 46. That's just how their season went.
It's really unfortunate for their fans as to why they're in today's video. They had a really good year offensively, and with how wide open the playoffs are this year, who knows what would have happened if the Cowboys had even close to a league average defense. Dak Prescott threw for 4,500 yards and 30 passing touchdowns. Javonte Williams had over 1,200 yards rushing, along with double-digit rushing touchdowns, and they also had 2 1,000-yard receivers in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And this should be viewed as one of the better years in the past few years for the franchise. It was a wildly successful season offensively, yet the defense let them down repeatedly. They finished dead last in points allowed per game and allowed 30 points or more 9 times in 2025. They allowed 400 yards or more 6 times, and I'll be direct, I had a lot of questions about Brian Schottenheimer heading into the 2025 season and how well this team would play under Schotty, and a lot of those concerns are gone. Yeah. It's unfortunate Matt Eberflus's defense was as bad as they were, not only for the fans of course, but for wasting a year of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens' prime. Now, there has been some questions about whether or not the Cowboys will keep George Pickens in 2026, as he is scheduled to be a free agent, and per Over the Cap, the Cowboys are about $40 million currently over the cap, but they can move money around and restructure guys and free up cap space to be able to retain George Pickens. And that's exactly what they should do. And also within the salary cap discussion, the salary cap goes up every year, so there's also going to be more space to operate to be able to get the George Pickens contract done. But with how good the Commanders were in 2024, and especially Jaden Daniels, it shouldn't be expected that they're going to be 5-12 every year, and for Dallas to sweep them every year. And why this was also a frustrating year for Dallas was this was a down year for the Eagles, who, as we know, have one of the most talented rosters in the entire league. And if you are not aware of how bad the Cowboys defense was in 2025, which makes this all the more frustrating and only adding to why they're in today's video, they finished with the number 4 worst defense in the history of DVOA.
That's crazy.
The other teams in the top 5 were all teams back in the 1980s, and all of them had 2 wins. One of those teams was the household name 1982 Rams, who finished 2-7 in a strike-shortened season. You can name pretty much every statistic against this team in 2025, awful, and they were bad. They finished last in points allowed, they were 30th in yards allowed, 26th in average yards per carry against, and opposing quarterbacks threw 35 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions against the Cowboys in 2025. And if you were wondering if they were maybe an opportunistic defense, one that creates a lot of turnovers and plays with fire a little too much, well, no, that wasn't the case either, as they finished 30th in turnovers and had a -9 turnover margin on the year. If you would have said heading into the year that the Cowboys offense would have a 4,500-yard passer, a 1,200-yard rusher, 2 1,000-yard receivers, and hell, even within this, a tight end to have 8 receiving touchdowns, it would be rightfully assumed they were heading to the playoffs, and you'd probably ask how far they made it. But to not even get there is a wasted year. Now, would they have won into Seattle and beat the Seahawks against that defense and that team, even if they had a league average defense? I would say probably not because of how good that unit is, but it's the fact they accomplished everything they did on the offensive side of the ball this year with virtually nothing to show for it. And before we continue, today's video is sponsored by
We're underdog around here, bro. Underdog and rebad, baby. He's gonna give us a line. Sam Darnold, Kyle Juszczyk, Rome Odunze. I'm about to make this line real quick. Hold on, chat. Yeah, I'm about to make this line real quick, bro. I trust him. I'm going to put my faith in him. And he better not fuck me over either, man. I'm going to trust him. Man. Gosh, bro, where's Sam Darnold at? Lower. Kyle Juszczyk higher. Hold on. Who's the other guy? Rome Odunze? Hold on. Alright, we'll go Kyle higher. Rome Odunze higher. And then, hold on. Alright, 6-time multiplier. $32 out of this shit. I'll take it. Alright. I'm trusting him, man. Picture lock, bro. I'm putting my faith in this guy, bro. I'm putting my faith in you, gang. You fucked me over, I know something, twin.
Could have left the game, so I do like Juice more than 14.5 receiving yards. I also really like Rome Odunze more than 36.5 receiving yards, as the same concept with Juice applies here with Rome. Bay Buccaneers are in today's deposit. Prize Picks will give you reasons. The first, of course, is underperformance. The second is, unfortunately, injuries that played a big part into why they underperformed. And the third is a reason that if we did a winners and losers video from the 2026 offseason, they would probably be in that video too, and it's for keeping Todd Bowles in 2026.
I don't know why Todd Bowles still has a job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, bro. Why do they decide? Why do certain owners like to pick and choose when keeping head coaches who have constantly underperformed or just done enough just for them to keep a job, but you know they'll never get over that hump? Why? I don't understand it.
Now, if you would have said back in August that in order to win the NFC South, that the Buccaneers need to win 9 games to win their 5th straight division title and what would be their 4th straight under Todd Bowles, because in 2021 they were still head coached by Bruce Arians, everybody probably would have rightfully said, great, can't wait to see who they play in the first round of the playoffs, assuming they don't get the number 1 seed, and rightfully so. But why the Bucs are in today's video is the continuation of the Todd Bowles era and also the underperformance, which was highlighted throughout several games in the 2021 2025 season. This was a team that once upon a time was 5-1. They went out to Seattle, beat the Seahawks 38-35. Baker Mayfield was in MVP conversations. Emeka Egbuka had a 163-yard performance in Seattle and looked like a future offensive rookie of the year. I mean, through 5 games, Emeka Egbuka's performance at that point was comparable to Ja'Marr Chase through 5 games, and Ja'Marr obviously had the receiving yards record in his rookie season until Puka Nacua broke it in 2023, but this was an electric football team through the first 6 weeks of the year, and if you would have said that the rest of the way that they would go 3-8 and that they would finish 8-9 and that Carolina would win the division, I don't think anybody would have believed you. What was really unfortunate for the 2025 Bucs was how many big players they had miss injuries, whether it was Cody Mauch, Elijah Cansey, Tristan Wirfs, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving. The list goes on in terms of how many guys missed substantial time, and there's honestly more players than that missed time in 2025 for the Bucs. But why they're also in today's video is because a lot of this, not the injury part because you can't control injuries. If a guy's leg bends sideways or breaks, I mean, you can't control that part, right? That's part of football. But they could have prevented this to begin with if they would have hired Liam Cohen over Todd Bowles, and then they ended up firing offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard after the 25 season and still retained Todd Bowles. And I know Bucs fans get frustrated because I get frustrated as a non-Bucs fan watching this team punt the ball at 4th and 2 from the opposing 46-yard line.
Yeah, that's another thing. And Todd Bowles also has no fucking balls. This guy's right. I've seen, like, in primetime games, 4th and 2, we really should just be going for it here. But, you know, we're going to punt. He's so conservative, bro. You need a coach that has enough balls to go for that shit, man. Have enough trust in your team to go for that shit. Because that tells the team that you're like, damn, this guy really don't got that much trust in us to get only 2 yards, bro. You feel me? Like, you need to be gone, son.
Not in 1987, go for it. We're in 2026.
Yeah.
And pertaining to the 2026 Bucs season outlook, I can't help but think how limited this team is going to be in terms of a true team ceiling, because I'm not going to take a Todd Bowles coach team over a Sean McVay coach team, over a Ben Johnson coach team, or a Kyle Shanahan coach team when the season is on the line in the playoffs. So not only are the Bucs, to me, big losers from the 25 season because of how much they underachieved, but they are already big losers from the 26 offseason, and I think that this team will have a pretty clear cap in terms of where they're going to be able to go or how far they're going to be able to go next year, due in large part to keeping Todd Bowles. Now, the unfortunate part for not just the Buccaneers, the Seahawks are probably going to experience this with Klint Kubiak too, but when you do have an offensive-minded coach, like a Liam Cohen or like a Klint Kubiak, they are going to leave whenever they have the opportunity. And I should have said defensive-minded coach, because the offensive guys, I mean, as cliche as the term YOLO is, you do only live once. You have to capitalize and strike while the iron's hot. So if guys get head coaching opportunities and have the opportunity to make 8 figures per year to be a head coach of an NFL team, they're going to take that, and that's part of the nature of the beast. And to keep Todd Bowles in 2026 and not try and bring in an offensive-minded coach in what would be a very attractive job because of how talented the Bucs roster is, a lot of this has been preventable for the Buccaneers over the past several months. The Arizona Cardinals are in today's video for similar reasons to the Bucs, and it's because they underachieved with the talent they had. But what is really frustrating for the future outlook of the Arizona Cardinals is they didn't just finish last in the division, they finished 9 games back from a tie for second place, as both the Rams and 49ers each had 12 wins.
Well, they're in a conference with demons, though, bro. I mean, all 3 of these teams made the playoffs. Yeah, you're 9 wins behind to be tied for second. But again, you're in a conference with fucking demons, bro. All 3 of these teams can easily make the Super Bowl and damn near win the Super Bowl. Maybe not the Niners because of injuries, but, you know, the Rams and Seahawks, again, that's like, is that really a fair comparison for the Cardinals now? They do have a phenomenal offense. Their defense is just, I don't think their defense is bad. Their coaches are just terrible.
2025, and the Seahawks, of course, were the number 1 seed and had 14 wins. And when you're in a division with Mike McDonald, Sean McVay, and Kyle Shanahan, good luck, because the next head coach is more than likely going to be not one, but multiple tiers below those guys as a head coach. And the roster for the Cardinals, while I do think it is a lot more talented than a 3-win roster, it's not more talented than the other rosters in the division, and it's a really unfortunate position for the next head coach to be in. And whether you know this or not, because this is not a stat that's going to be broadcast a lot, but the Cardinals' leading rusher in 2025 was Michael Carter, who had, you guessed it, 333 rushing yards on the year.
Awful.
And not only that, but the Cardinals had 2 1,000-yard receivers in 2025, as Trey McBride had an all-time season for tight ends, and Michael Wilson also eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark, but it really didn't matter. And Jonathan Gannon finished his tenure 2-19 when Kyler Murray was not the starter, and this was an all-around frustrating season for the Cardinals because they obviously underachieved, but several of their former high draft picks, whether it was Marvin Harrison, whether it was Darius Robinson, Paris Johnson even had a bit of a down year.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys underperformed too, and this was a roster and is a roster that I still believe in, but for them to only win 3 games and to be selecting in the top 3 of the 2026 NFL draft is not something that I would have believed, or a position that they would be in heading into the 2025 season, and that's largely why they are in today's video. The Detroit Lions are up, and heading into the 2025 season, it was Super Bowl or bust in the Motor City.
Yeah.
They were coming off of a 15-2 season in 2024, in which they had a top 15 offense ever in points per game, and had 8 double-digit victories before getting bounced in the divisional round of the playoffs. A regression was expected from a wins-loss standpoint, as winning 15 games 2 years in a row is nearly impossible for anyone, but with how injured this team was in 2024, along with how good they already were, well, this is why it was Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah.
And in 2025, they finished 4th in points per game, as they averaged 28.3 per game on the year, and also had 6 double-digit victories. But they couldn't make stops when it mattered, and despite finishing 4th in the NFL in points per game in 2025, they had a lot of problems with offensive coordinator John Morton, and there was also a lot of frustration with defensive coordinator Calvin Shepard. They were 8-5 through 13 games, and after coming off of a 44-30 win against the Cowboys, they put up 34 points on the road in Los Angeles against the Rams, but that wasn't enough, as the Rams won 41-34 and put up 519 yards of offense.
That's awful.
They then lost the following week to the Steelers with a score of 29-24, and this was in a game where the Steelers had 481 yards of total offense and was undoubtedly one of their best offensive performances since the Killer B days, which at this point is going on close to a decade. And between the Rams having 519 yards and the Steelers having 481 yards in back-to-back weeks, the Lions defense allowed 1,000 total yards of opposing offense in those 2 games. This was also the first time the Lions had lost back-to-back games in 3 years, and that type of success is obviously hard to replicate long term, but this is how good the Lions have been in this span. They didn't coincidentally go 27-7 over the course of the 23 and 24 regular seasons, and with their playoff chances already slim with an 8-7 record entering a Week 17 game against the Vikings on Christmas Day, the Lions entered that game with just 8 turnovers on the year in the first 15 games of the year, and turned the ball over 6 times against Minnesota.
Yeah, that shit was crazy.
And lost by double digits to a team led by Max Brosmer.
Yeah, that's even crazier, bro. Like I said in the beginning of the season, Super Bowl or bust for the Lions, bro. I even said that midway through the season, Super Bowl or bust, bro. And that defense is it's not the best defense in the world, bro. And like you said, they haven't lost back-to-back games in about 2 or 3 years. That's a crazy stat in itself, but then it's like, what am I trying to say here for the Lions, bro? I don't even know what I'm trying to say about the Lions, bro. They're just the fucking Lions, gang.
Brosmer finished the day with a whopping 3 net passing yards, and to not only lose a game where the opposing offense had whopping 3 digits to a team led by Max Brosmer. Brosmer finished the day with a whopping 3 net passing yards, and to not only lose a game where the opposing offense has, and this is not an exaggeration, next to nothing at the quarterback position, and to lose by double digits to officially be eliminated from the postseason.
I don't even have any words to say about that shit, bro. I was hopeful for the Lions to be great, bro, because I wanted to see the city of Detroit win something for once, but
Well, that's a good summarization of the 2025 Lions season.
Yep.
There was a lot of frustration from the Lions fan base with
hard?
GM Brad Holmes down the stretch of the 25 season because one of the biggest weaknesses the Lions had entering the year was not having a legit number 2 rusher behind Aiden Hutchinson, and it certainly showed at times. Now, believe it or not, there was even frustration with Hutchinson at times throughout the season. But Al-Quadin Muhammad had a really good season for Detroit in 2025 as he finished the year with over 50 pressures and 11 sacks, but outside of Hutch and Muhammad, no Lions player had more than 25 pressures. Opposing quarterbacks threw 31 touchdowns against this team this year, which ranked 26th in the NFL, and for Jared Goff to throw for 4,500 yards and 34 touchdowns, and for Jahmyr Gibbs to have over 1,800 total yards and 18 touchdowns, and even Amon-Ra St. Brown, who Lions fans became frustrated with at times as he had a career high in drops, still go for over 1,400 yards, and even J-Mo to have a career high 1,117 receiving yards, missed the playoffs a year after winning 15 games, unfortunately puts them in today's video. There are people that have said the Lions have peaked and that they missed their chance, and I will acknowledge that there is a better chance they do not win 15 games again than they do, but I don't think this team is done. If they acquire a second edge rusher and shore up the offensive line, which is possible to do in one offseason, they should get right back to the postseason. And with how good their offense is, a unit that can explode at any time, given that they can beat anybody on any given Sunday, they are certainly not dead. But for the purpose of today's video, they were one of the biggest losers from the 2025 NFL season.
Yeah, I remember after they lost the championship game to the Niners, I remember Dan Campbell said, we may never get here again. And that becomes more true and true every year, bro. Every year for the Lions since then.
Next is the two teams that finished first and second in the AFC North, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens entered the 2025 season with legit Super Bowl aspirations, as they lost in the divisional round of the playoffs last year in Buffalo, as they committed 3 turnovers in that game. They still put up 25 points on the road, but they dropped a 2-point conversion to tie the game late in the fourth quarter, and it was too little too late. And in the Week 1 game of the 2025 season, they played the Bills, and they looked really good through the first few quarters of that game. I mean, it was to the point where I had some thoughts during that game of how is anybody going to stop this team when they are clicking on all cylinders like this. Little did I know that in some ways that was going to be the peak of the Ravens season, at least with how they played, as they ended up finishing the year with an 8-9 record. They of course started 1-5, and they had an easy stretch during the middle of their season, and it was everyone's prediction that they were going to go from 1-5 to 6-5, which, credit the Ravens, they did go from 1-5 to 6-5 to win 5 games in a row. But even during that stretch, Ravens fans would be the first to tell you that while they were winning games, there was at no point during that stretch where they looked like they did for those first few quarters in Week 1 against Buffalo, and they looked like a team that could legitimately be making a run. And they were in some ways kind of going through the motions, and as we know, they moved on from John Harbaugh at the end of the season, and for the first time in nearly 20 years, the Baltimore Ravens will have a new head coach in 2026, and it's because they underachieved all throughout the 25 season. Now, it is unfortunate that Lamar Jackson missed 4 games in 2025, but they still had the opportunity to win the AFC North in Week 18, which they failed to do so, and the Ravens not even making the playoffs with how high of expectations they had heading into the 25 season, along with moving on to a new head coach, and also finishing with a below 500 record, puts them in today's video. Now, for the Steelers portion, I would argue this is more from a fan's perspective, but through 12 games, they were 6-6. For the coaches, they failed, but they still had the opportunity to win the AFC North in Week 18, which they failed to do so, and the Ravens not...
I don't even blame Lamar, bro. I blame Lamar to some extent because sometimes he does throw, like, dumbass picks or just plays awful football sometimes, but, I mean... I don't know what he's done to people or in society to have some of the most heartbreaking losses ever, but he has some of the most heartbreaking losses ever consistently every year, bro. It's never like, okay, I remember that one time. No, it's a lot of times you have to remember that about Lamar and this Ravens team, bro.
Even making the playoffs with how high of expectations they had heading into the 25 season, along with moving on to a new head coach, and also finishing with a below 500 record, puts them in today's video. Now, for the Steelers portion, I would argue this is more from a fan's perspective, but through 12 games, they were 6-6. They won 4 of their final 5 games of the 25 season to finish with a 10-7 record, and like we mentioned during the Lions portion, they had one of the best games offensively they've had in the past 10 years. Everything was working that day, and DK Metcalf was suspended for the final 2 games of the regular season, but you still won the division, miraculously, might I add. But look, you won the division, you have a home playoff game at Acrisure Stadium, DK Metcalf is back, he looks good in the first couple of drives, we might have something cooking here, and then everything falls apart and you lose by 24 points. Mike Tomlin steps down the day after the game. Aaron Rodgers is widely expected to retire, and it was a couple of variables different this year than it has been in each of the past 4 years, but it was the same result, and Mike Tomlin with this playoff loss tied Marvin Lewis for 7 straight playoff losses, and it was a lot of build-up for unfortunately nothing, which has been the same result for the Steelers for, well, really going on 10 years now, and again, I really do feel bad for the fans. The Falcons are up, and they're in today's video for a couple of reasons, but the biggest is they finished the year with an 8-9 record. They, of course, tied with the Bucs and Panthers for the NFC South. Of course, the Panthers won as they had tiebreakers, but the frustrating part with the Falcons season is if a game here or a game there goes their way, they finish with a 9-8 record. They make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, and obviously you can do the if a game goes this way, if a game goes that way for several teams, but the Falcons, to me, are a more talented team than an 8-9 record, and
we are. And I'm sick of the disrespect. I can't help it if our head coach doesn't give a fuck about anything about the game. I can't help it if we have one of the worst offense coordinators in the game right now. I just cannot help that shit. I can't also help team morale or our defense because everybody starts getting mopey. You can literally see people just quitting on plays when we're losing or when we're down. Hell, the whole arena, the whole Mercedes-Benz starts leaving midway or somewhat into the third quarter, beginning of the fourth if we're down. That's what the atmosphere and culture is like right now. And we need a culture shock at the head coach.
I think there was a reason that Raheem Morris was fired, and also Terry Fontenot for that matter too.
Thank God.
But it's the frustration of not only finishing with a losing record and just missing out on the playoffs, it's the fact that Bijan Robinson had the most yards from scrimmage for a running back in Falcons franchise history. It's the fact that, again, if a single game goes a different way, that there is something to build off of, that you won the division, that we won the NFC South, and that we're heading into 26 without a first-round pick with excitement because we just won the division. But also within the 2025 season, Michael Penix didn't play particularly great at really any point. There was a game here, a game there, but he was an incredibly risk-averse player. He didn't push the ball deep downfield as much
I'm done with Michael Penix, bro. I don't know about y'all, man, as a Falcons fan, other Falcons fans out there, bro, I'm done with Michael Penix. I was never sold on Michael Penix. He's always been inaccurate his whole career, always been injury-prone his whole career. I think this is like his 3rd or 4th ACL tear before he's even 30. I'm done with the guy, bro. I want him off the team.
You would like, especially for how much he did during his final year at Washington, and there were certainly times where he played timid, and he unfortunately tore his ACL. Obviously, one of the big knacks on him in the pre-draft process was the injury concerns, and right now there's a lot of uncertainty at a premium position with the Falcons entering 2026, and Jake Matthews has been in the NFL for over a decade now, so you will have to have a quarterback conversation at some point this offseason, as well as replace your left tackle.
Bro, like...
And the Falcons right now, while...
Dude, just look at these numbers, right? They're not awful, but they're not what you expect from a guy we took in the first round, though. They're just not. They're not at all.
They have several great players on their roster at key positions. I really worry about the future of the Falcons quarterback position because I don't know what they're going to do. Michael Penix, I would imagine, is going to be the guy in 2026, but what should also be remembered is there's going to be a new GM and new head coach, and he's also coming off of a major injury, so there's no ties to Michael Penix to basically save his job and say, hey, I drafted you, hey, I became the head coach of this team because of you, so I'm going to go down with the ship. So if Michael Penix plays bad in 2026, which, again, I didn't think there was a lot to build off of in 2025, there's a lot of questions for this team that, again, has a pretty talented roster, all things considered. There's a couple teams I think you could have in today's video, like the Colts, who of course started the year with a 7-1 record, then finished the year with an 8-9 record, but there's also a conversation to be had that this team overachieved relative to what was expected from them to begin with, because nobody thought that they were going to start out the gates with a 7-1 record, and that Jonathan Taylor was for sure going to be the offensive player of the year before, unfortunately, things fell off. And the entirety of the 2025 season, I think, should be considered, but if you made this video based on the second half of the 25 season relative to where they were, then they would be in today's video for sure. But like I said, if you would have said at the beginning of the year the Colts finished third in the AFC South, nobody would have batted an eye. The Commanders dealt with an enormous amount of injuries, so do you really want to include them in today's video, especially when their starting quarterback went down? That's another conversation. And the Chargers, of course, dealt with their fair share of injuries, and if you wanted to include the Chargers in today's video because of how embarrassed they were in the playoff game against the Patriots, I could understand why you'd want to put them in today's video. And by the way, we recently did a Chargers video. I recommend going to check that out.
For sure, bro. Fuck, man. All right, man. That's it for me, bro. Hope everybody enjoyed the video, bro. I'm out, bro. I'll see y'all boys in the next one, man.